There we are. All right. So let's pray real quick. Lord, we come
Yes.
to you and we ask for your divine grace and presence in this live as we do this to share your light and your love to a lost and dying world. We praise you for all the wonderful things you've done for us and are doing for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Awesome. So, thank you for hanging out with me on this.
Oh,
Um,
it'll be fun.
it's yeah. I've looked over all your stuff that you've done, and you've pretty much done everything. And it's
Well,
really an honor to talk to somebody who's paved the way for the next generation to talk about faith in media and to make it more ready, I guess. So what the first thing I want to know is what started you in wanting to do media?
in high school, I don't really know where it came from. Maybe it was always there. I wanted to be a writer,
Hmm.
and I love movies. I actually love TV more than movies in many ways, and I wanted to be a writer of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, but of course, it was before the internet, before anything. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia,
Hmm.
and so it wasn't like I had a lot of resources to learn how. But by scouring a lot of bookstores and libraries, I found a couple of books on how to be a screenwriter. And what they all said, and it's still true, if you want to be a writer, you have to write. So
Yep.
I just started writing. So they said, you got to have a spec script. You need a sample of an existing show, not one that you made up, just an existing show. And so by the time I got out of high school, I'd written just for myself, nobody else, just three, four. I think there was four TV shows and the better part of a feature, and then I kind of continued that in college. It's just so sort of self-taught, I guess, in some respects, but at the same time, had books that said this is what it looks like.
Hmm.
And the other thing, right now, there are so many resources
Oh
for
yeah.
people who are wanting to learn, but also to perfect what they're doing. Uh, you can't stop learning,
Hmm.
and not only that, you can download on for free amazing scripts. Like
Yeah.
also way back in the day, getting my hands on a script was nearly impossible. A friend of mine, her father somehow was involved with the shooting of Smokey and the Bandit. He provided some kind of material or something. I don't know. Uh, I'm giving away my age here, and so they so somehow he got a hold of a script and they gave me a copy, and it's like, oh, it's gold. I,
Yeah.
I see what a real script looks like. Well, now you can
Yeah.
download them. So
Yeah.
somehow that just excited me. And so I studied in college broadcasting at the University of Georgia,
Hmm.
and a year later moved out here and to be a writer, to be a producer, to be Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
They already had one of those, so
Yeah.
I had to figure out what I was going to do. But
Hmm.
it's just always I've always liked reading and stories and storytelling, and I also love nonfiction and everything else. I just reading is fun,
So
and
what,
so
I guess the first thing, because a lot of people have thought about doing stuff in media, what was emotionally just dropping everything and moving to LA or to California? How did you cope with that? Was it even a problem? Were you all gung ho?
I was all gung ho because I had throughout high school pretty much determined this is the path I was going. I was actually very fortunate.
Yeah.
As my own kids were reaching high school and graduating high school and what they're going to do, I kept saying, "My gosh, you're supposed to have it all planned out."
Yeah.
And my wife basically told me, "Look, you are weird, right? Most people don't know what they're going to do for the rest of their life." And I was fortunate in that regard.
Yeah.
So coming out here was actually, um, it was like finally after all these years of wanting to be somewhere.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'd like to move back to Atlanta, but that's a whole other story.
Yes.
But but and it was easy. There were two friends that I'd known in college, and we all kind of wanted to do something similar. And so we all moved out. The three of us moved out about the same time, within a 6-month period, I think.
Hmm.
And so that was real critical because it provided community.
Yeah.
I had come to the Lord in college,
Oh,
and
cool.
so so this was my chance to, okay, I'm gonna live my life. How am I gonna do it? And it was like, okay, well then I need to find a church.
Yeah.
That seems like an idea. Yeah.
Yep.
So I looked at the phone book, which for some of your viewers is a
Yeah. It's a giant
uh,
book.
is an analog
Yes.
whitepages.com.
Yeah.
And so I was able to look at the phone book, find what's a church near me, and that was great. I ended up meeting my wife there,
Oh, cool.
or the woman who became my wife, and I grew. I had community there. I had community with my two friends. We basically were broke for most of it, you know, and we just sat and played Trivia Pursuit every night. You know, that was how we entertained ourselves. So,
Hilarious.
um, and then we would drive up over Mulholland, which is where when you drive across Mulholland, I guess it's Avenue, Mulholland Drive actually, and you look down into the valleys or and over into Hollywood, which side you look, you see all the lights and you see all that, and that was always fun just to
Yeah.
go do that. We did cheap things. Driving around now isn't cheap, but back then it was. Or
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
cheapish.
Cheapish. So
So,
when you how did you like how have you been able to keep your faith? And because I'm sure that you've been tempted a lot of times, how did you manage to create that where you're like, okay, this is what I will do, this is what I won't do, and create that line in the sand for yourself to where you have that moral compass?
well, I think one of the things was one. My wife is someone who strong in the faith and a strong believer, and so being married to her helps you walk together as we
Yeah.
help each other. But the local church, being at my church, that and then the one that we've been at since '95, uh, that has been, you know, that's where you get grounded.
Yeah.
The problem is that everyone out here in Hollywood is different degrees of crazy,
Yeah.
and probably I am too. Hopefully,
Oh,
less
I've been
degree
there. I
than some
know
of the
it's
others, you know.
true. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, so by having a community that's a church community,
Mhm.
it's great when we people in media get around and Christian
Yeah.
believers to be able to talk and stuff. But there's also some value of being in a small group
Yes.
that are people who are accountants,
Yeah.
contractors, plumbers, people trying to, because they're dealing with the same things you are in the sense
Yeah.
of trying to raise kids, trying to
Mhm.
earn a living, trying to, you know, and so one hand is just to kind of not dive so deep into the world of you live or die by what is in Hollywood Reporter that
Mhm.
morning. You try to live and die by what's in the Word of God every morning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, you got to eventually get around to reading Hollywood Reporter, but it's a matter of trying to focus, I think.
Mhm.
And I haven't done it perfectly, but the Lord has. He grows us, He matures us. You
Yeah.
know, He sanctifies us, to use the big theology word, and he helps us through all of our experiences, and just being able to say, as I'm older, especially now when, you know, we've been empty nesters for a while, and it makes being able to every day start your day a little more focused. You know, when
Mm.
you know you got little kids, you got to get up and out the door, and you got to get
Yeah.
this and that, and you know, it makes it a lot more hectic, and it's a season that is I found harder in a way than now in terms of being able to walk with God in a much more um, present way. It's not like I didn't feel like God was with me then, and I certainly prayed. I certainly read my Bible, went to church, did all that. But um, somehow, just as I've grown older, I guess I've matured, and
Mhm.
there's just things that you have to do. Like we all, 99 probably 0.89% of us in America have decided, we've made a commitment
Yeah.
that we're going to drive on the right hand side of the road.
Yep.
It is the law, but so is the speed limit, and we don't always follow that. Right? So,
Yeah.
so we've decided that we're going to do that. But like I'm just not going to drive on the left hand side of the road as in a two-way street.
Hmm.
So there are just some things that we have to. Every individual has to say, you know what? I'm not going to drive on the left hand side of the road.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay here in this lane. This lane, I'm safe in this lane. I've got guardrails on this lane.
Hmm.
I and that will look different in different people's circumstances. You know, um, it's kind of like I always think of what C.S. Lewis wrote one time. He was talking about. He said, you know, that he is never given to the desire to gamble.
Hmm.
Like that. That's just not his
Yeah.
thing. But he knows that other people are drawn into the desire to gamble and lose your life savings and lose
Hmm.
everything. And I think that, you know, God has, you know, wired us differently. And that's the magnificence of the whole world is that
Yes.
we're all very different, yet we all have commonality.
Hmm.
And it's that tension between what we're alike in and what we're different in. And with that comes various temptations to compromise.
Hmm.
And so I think that as you grow, a lot of the temptations are, and the threat to compromise are the same for everybody working in business, right? It's whether you're in entertainment, you're in corporate entertainment. It's the, you know, do you kind of lie to kind of cover up a mistake? Do
Hmm.
you, you know, pad your expense account? You know, just kind of say, oh, it was this person, somebody else on your expense. You know, these are just common things. But
Hmm.
then you get into things that are more specific for those who are involved in the media in the content, like the
Hmm.
quote unquote above the line people, the
Yeah.
writers, the directors, producers, the people who are shaping what's going to be inside of a movie,
Yeah.
as opposed to below the line where they're just executing what's already been decided in many respects. That's one way to look at it.
Hmm.
And those who are dealing with the content, there has to be some things we just decide we're not going to do,
Yeah.
no matter how um, much money it would be, how desperately we need money right now,
Yeah.
how great it might be. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, and so I think that only the Lord can speak through the Holy Spirit to each one of us about certain circumstances. This too much because most projects that you're asked to be a part of, they're not black and white in the sense of like, what we're going to do in this show is we want to glorify Satan. And so what we're going to do is we
Yeah.
want you to come in here and write a script for me that's going to, you know, it's not like that. It's more like, well, it's got this part in, it's got this
Mhm.
part in, it's kind of mixed, you know. And so there's a judgment call. And the Holy
Yeah.
Spirit, if you apply the principles of the word and let what the Lord will lead you, um, no matter how much it is, that you just have to decide you're not going to drive on the left hand side of the road, you know,
Hmm.
into oncoming traffic,
Yes.
because that's what really it will be doing for you
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
is you will be driving your life, your soul, your
Come on.
family, your everything into ongoing traffic.
Yeah, and I
And
think like I want to draw that out a little bit. That's a great analogy because all the things that God has in His Word are based in such a way that when you follow them, it saves you from the danger, like you said, of being in the left
mhm,
hand side. And I think
mhm.
that that's just a really spot on analogy for making those choices. Do you mind giving some examples of things that you had to decide? Hey, I'm not going to.
Yeah, just even in corporate, I kind of spent. I started as a freelance writer for a couple of years, and then I did corporate media, like
Hmm.
working for different studios and networks. And then since really 2021, I've been working. Oh, I'm sorry, since 2001. It's
Hmm.
a lot longer than I sometimes remember. Since then, I've really been freelancing, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And so in the corporate world, the temptation to the examples I gave were actually from my own life. The
Yeah.
temptation to kind of skewer the truth a little bit, just to shade it the right way,
Hmm.
so that either your mistakes might not be shown, or that's a temptation.
Yeah.
And it takes courage
Yes,
to
it
tell
does.
the truth.
Yes, it does.
And I'm a vice president. Like, are they really looking that closely at my expense account?
Yeah.
I could take my wife out to dinner, and then, at a nice place, because
Mhm.
no one in Hollywood goes to any place bad. I mean, we don't really go to In-N-Out, for
Yeah.
business lunch.
Yeah.
And then take my wife to dinner and to just say it was a writer.
Mm-hmm.
No one ever knows. No one ever cares. I could make up a name. I could take John Smith to all sorts of dinners, and it'll just get passed through. And those are things where you're there and you're like, oh, because everyone is doing it, and everyone openly is doing it and talking
Yeah.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was for a number of years, I was an assistant to I was a temporary assistant, and then I actually had a real job as an assistant in for people corporate media, and I would do their expense account. And here's the receipts, and I'd look, oh, they were there's not a there's not a lunch scheduled here or a dinner scheduled here. And I'd have to say, who did you go with to dinner with last Wednesday?
Yeah.
And they'll say, why don't just put down so and so, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, they didn't go to dinner with that person,
Yeah.
right? And so I knew how it was, and it's like, hey, that's just how it is. And it'd be kind of like an extra, you could either treat yourself to something or pad things. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's those kind of just common temptations that I wish I'd say that I never,
Yeah.
oh no, I'm never gonna even entertain that thought. But you do. You go,
Yeah.
what does it matter? We're a little
Mm-hmm.
shy this month.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes I haven't really. The very first script, when I was um how old was I? I was like 24 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I had gotten an assignment to write an episode of Scooby Doo.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I hadn't written anything professionally before. This was just huge, and I was like, "Oh yes, I'm going to do it."
Yeah.
And then, so I meet, and they talk, and they say, "Okay, here's the story we want you to do."
Mm-hmm.
And great, great. And it was I mean, it's Scooby. It's silly. It was
Yeah.
about there was a evil person, right? And but there was these silly witches, right?
Mhm.
And and for a fleeting moment, I said, "Wait, it's about witches. Is that should I not do that?" And I'm 24. I mean, I haven't really thought much about these kinds of things. It was just,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just said, hey, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I didn't really, and they were silly and they were goofy and they were, it wasn't like that we were teaching kids how to,
Yeah.
the actual incantations. And they were kind of like the Three Stooges, pretty
Yeah.
much. And so, but ever since then, I've often thought, should I have really said, what would have happened if I had said,
Wow.
maybe no, it's not witches. Because since then, that sort of made me think through sort of a philosophy of when you're dealing with the occult, which is really weird.
Yeah.
Back in the day with kids media,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't deal with the stuff you deal with now. You deal
Yeah.
with sexuality now.
Yeah.
You deal with all sorts of things now. But back in the day, we didn't deal with that. But what you really dealt with a lot was the occult,
Mm-hmm.
because there was always, well, fantasy, magic.
Yeah.
But where's that line?
Mm-hmm.
And a good way to ask a good Christian is basically, why are we fine with reading Narnia, Chronicles of
Mm-hmm.
Narnia, and Lord of the Rings, that has all these elements and people casting spells and people? Why is that okay? But we're not going to watch whatever the
Yeah.
latest, occult movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to think deeply about those things and try to arrive at some philosophies about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
those are a couple of things I think that uh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them. It's kind of like, fortunately, I have a really bad memory, and the Lord helps me to, once you sin, to
Yeah,
confess, repent. God says He separates them east of the
that's
west.
right.
He
That's right.
remembers them no more, and
Hmm.
I think He's helped me to forget them.
Yeah, which is a beautiful thing. And I think there's something you said there about how, you know, sometimes when you're tempted, it helps you clarify your lines on, okay, this attitude, this behavior is not right, and I'm not going there. And
Yeah,
but I think, getting that settled before you're tempted is a great
yeah,
thing.
and
So
a lot of it isn't just one last thought. Is
yeah, go ahead.
it's not that when you're encountering something about like, so you're in meetings, because it's not like everybody kind of thinks writers sit around and sit by themselves in a lonely place, and there is some of that, but there's a lot of times when you're with people and you're in a writer's room and you're tossing around ideas, and
Yeah.
somebody says, hey, what if they were a witch?
Hmm.
What if they found us, and it's not about saying, "Oh, wait a minute, hold on,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna do this. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
I read my Bible."
Yeah.
A lot of times, you can try to steer the conversation away from it.
Yeah.
You can offer creative alternatives
Hmm.
that you can do. Um, I think Christians, a lot of times, especially in the old days, I felt like I was playing defense
Mm.
because there were three networks. This is the dinosaur days. There were three
Yeah.
networks, and if I had some influence in what went on the air or didn't go on the air, or as a writer, what I wrote or didn't write, defense worked.
Hmm.
But now I think that, I mean, we certainly still need that defense, but oh my gosh, what,
Yeah. Yep.
1,000 streaming outlets right now,
Hmm.
at least,
Yep.
with, I mean, even just with the kids, there's hundreds and
Oh
hundreds
yeah.
just in the kids space. And so, if you say, oh no, we're not going to do that,
Hmm.
well, that's fine. They got plenty of other people to go to. So I think that long about the transition in 2001 for me was really to switch from defense to offense,
Yeah,
to
I
use
agree with
a
that.
lousy sports metaphor because I know nothing about sports. But
No, me neither.
um, I think I think I'll use that right. And because you always want to try to hit a home run when you're playing football.
There you go.
So the thing is that, so I see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and
Anyway, yeah.
I agree with you because when I first started this association, it was the International Christian Association of Professional Artists in Media, and because I didn't know what I was doing, but when God tells you to do, you just go, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I was out there, I was talking to people, and then I felt like, okay, who are we? What are we? And then I was like, okay, well, we're warriors because we want to stand for
Hmm.
truth and justice and protect families and faith. And I was like, and we're in media, so we're the Media Warrior Association. And I thought, but what you said about going from defense to offense, I think that's the time. I think that's what God's doing, because right now we are in like this media revival, and it's really neat. I've
Hmm.
seen
Yeah.
I've seen people setting aside their egos, which I've
Hmm.
never seen before,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
that's definitely a God thing. So I want to ask you first. I want to ask you a technical question. When you write, what do you use to write? Like, what computer program are you using?
I work in Final Draft.
Awesome, awesome. Um, what's your creative process look like?
Um, yeah, it's a matter of, you mean for writing a script,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of like, okay, well, first of all, there's ideation where you've
Hmm.
got to decide, and it might be that you're working. I do a lot of series work, so you're writing a series. So what's this one episode going to be about?
Hmm.
Which is different than if you're going to write a film, where you're going to say,
Yeah.
okay, well, where in the world are we starting? And I've done
Hmm.
both. But it all starts with an idea,
Yep.
maybe a character.
Hmm.
For a series is an aspect of the character,
Mm.
and oftentimes it helps to say, what would happen to our whoever our main character is. What's one of the worst things that could happen to them?
Mm.
That's called comedy,
There
right?
you go.
In a
Yeah.
way. So what can you put? Where can you put this guy in? As the adage says, the 3-act structure is you throw rocks at a person, chase them up a tree. Act 2, you keep throwing rocks at them. Act 3, you get them down from the tree. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just very simple. And then I like to work with a structured outline. And a
Okay.
lot of people just like, hey, open up Final Draft. Let's just go.
Mhm.
I paint myself into too many corners that way.
Yeah.
And I find that if there's this famous saying, whether he really said it or not, but Michelangelo said about David, they said, how did you carve this beautiful thing or sculpt it? And he said, well, I just chipped away everything that wasn't David, right?
Mhm.
So it's kind of a process. And that's kind of how I look about doing. I'm the Michelangelo of animation writing.
Yeah.
Uh, but it is you try to get the structure down
Mhm.
of what's going to happen, and 3-act structure is just everybody's friend,
Yeah.
and to really in the only mathematics in screenwriting is the simple fact that you take your show, you divide it by fourths. Act 1 is the first fourth. Act 2 is the second. The middle 50%. Act 3 is the last fourth.
Mhm.
And so on paper, on a Word document, usually, although now I actually just write it as action in Final Draft. Sometimes I do it that way too. But really just look at it. And before it gets really there, a lot of times I will incubate it,
Yeah.
for lack of a sounds a lot fancier than, well, I just kind of think about it for a few days,
Mhm.
which is while you're busy doing other things, you're just turning the story over in your mind. You're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how we're doing it. I'm working
Mhm.
on a series now that it's called Star Spangled Adventures,
Yeah.
and they're 7-minute history adventures for kids of learning American history. And with that, all the work is done ahead of time. Writing
Mhm.
the script, because they're 7-minute episodes, the script is a day,
Yeah.
can be a day.
Mhm.
Um, it's like how do you deliver the message of what you're trying to do? So what are you trying to do? You're trying to um, explain about Washington crossing the Delaware. Well,
Mhm.
why was that important? Where's the
Mhm.
stakes in that? And
Yeah.
so, a lot of times this process, the more you do on the front end,
Mhm.
the lot better the back end when you've opened up Final Draft will
Yes.
be. So
Yeah.
it's thinking about it, it's kind of noodling it. Just our subconscious will work on things
Yes.
that they'll actually sit and kind of polish some stuff up. And so when you really sit down to try to do it, and I often will just do my first stuff on a yellow pad, just
Mhm.
a vertical, yeah,
Yeah.
just yeah, I got one too,
Yep. There we
so
are.
just a this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens.
Yeah.
First, what are the turns of the story that it needs to be? We
Mm.
got to set up. We got to get the action going. We got to that. Then we got to add the complications. Then how we're going
Mhm.
to resolve it. And
Mhm.
then it's look another way of like, okay, well, how is that going to what scenes are
Uh-huh.
going to do that? And
Mm.
usually I never finish that, because usually by the time I get part of the way down, it's like, oh, okay, I got it. And,
Yeah.
and then it starts becoming looking like a real thing. And the normal way that you write an outline, at least for animation, and it really works for any kind, is that the slug heading, the exterior apartment day kind of
Mhm.
thing, put the slug heading in the outline in prose. It's just a Word document. And then each scene is about 2 paragraphs, maybe a
Mhm.
paragraph. And this is what happens. And you just summarize it, maybe a snatch of dialogue, but you're worried about structure, the
Mm.
movement of
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And then you just keep going down. And then you can kind of see. And with experience, you kind of get the sense of, is this too long or long enough or whatever
Mhm.
it is. Like when I'm writing like the 7-minute ones where I'm doing now, an outline is, if it's more than really a page and a half, maybe pushing 2, it's going to be too long. If
Mm.
it's only a page, well, it's not long enough. So
Yeah.
then you kind of get to judge. A a normal 11-minute, which is very common format for kids programs, is 11-minute stories. They'll run 7-8 pages of an outline. A 22 can run, double that.
Mhm.
If you're writing an outline for a network or a studio, they like it like really complete.
Mhm.
An outline, 30 pages is not unheard of.
Yeah.
And so the more work you do ahead of time, it's that shaping it. It's
Mm.
that it's not finished, but you're
Yeah.
shaping it. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
pottery. It's
Yeah.
whatever analogy you want to
Yeah.
use. And so then you go, yeah, okay, the story's working. This flows from here to there, this rising, falling action. I got, all the principles. And then I just literally cut and paste that outline into Final Draft, set everything as pretty much action, just so that the prose is action.
Yeah.
And I just go, okay, here we are. Well, we changed that to scene heading. Okay, I know where I'm going in this scene,
Mhm.
and I just start writing, and
Cool.
then I delete out the stuff, and sometimes action portions that were written in outline and prose just stays the action portions.
Great.
It's actually very simple.
Yeah.
It's actually not too complex, and really it's the front end that the all the work is done. The
Yeah.
actual sitting down to write. Now, a feature, of course, you're dealing with 120 pages,
Yep.
115 pages, whatever. It's a lot harder. And the 3 or 4 times when I've done that for on a commission for somebody, not just playing around myself, it's been you know keeping that big long structure going
Yeah.
is the challenge for me.
All right, let's
Um,
pause. Let's go back because I want to dig into that, but I want to clarify because one of the things that I desire to do is to help these young kids who are just
mhm.
now they're wet behind the ears and they want to make a Christian TV show or movie. So let's run through the television concept process one more time, kind of high level, to make sure I got it all. So
Sure.
when you start out, you're just kind of patting a pen and just brainstorming.
Right. Yeah, you're it's like solving a puzzle.
Yeah.
Okay. Breaking a story is the hardest part.
Hmm.
What's going to happen? Like,
Hmm.
Scooby Doo. Okay. So, what's the mystery going to be?
Hmm.
What's really behind it?
Hmm.
You know, in the old days, they pulled off a mask, right? Like, who,
Yeah.
who is it really? It's an evil land developer, right?
Yeah.
Trying to chase everybody out there. And so, with that comes, yeah, it's just ideation.
Hmm.
It's not so much like, oh, and it can start anywhere. It could be they're going into a haunted castle.
Yeah.
They're going to their pyramids. They're
Mhm.
underwater for some reason. They're in space for some reason.
Yeah.
So you got an idea, and it's pen and paper, just kind of thinking, but a
Mhm.
lot of just kind of turning it over.
Mhm.
Uh, s- Notes, scratch, just things. Part of the
Mhm.
time I'm running real fast, and then I go back later, like, what did I say
Yeah.
here?
I've
But
done
it,
that.
but it, oh yeah, but it's notes. It's just the key to breaking a story is what are the main movements? What's
Yeah.
going to happen? How does it get worse? How does it end? Just
Mhm.
thinking those in terms that yeah. So it's just that. Then then you start saying, okay, I kind of know what's going to happen with the story.
Mhm.
Now I need to sculpt more of it. I need to
Yeah,
shave
yeah,
off
yeah,
the
yeah.
stuff. I need to bring it more into focus.
Mhm.
So, what are then the scenes that are going to accomplish those beginning, middle, and end that I just talked about?
Yeah.
So then, when I got the scenes down, I
Mhm.
then can do each scene. Now, takes place here. Then we go here. Then we go here. Then we go here, and then it also then would be then I just put that out. That is the outline, and I
Mhm.
put that outline into a script format,
Yeah.
script thing, and then all you got to do is here's a paragraph or two of what happens when Scooby and them go into the castle. Well, the first time they go inside.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then you write it. Then you just turn that into a script.
Okay. Okay.
And then you got it.
So you're starting off brainstorming everything out and your idea phase. We're just coming up with the ideas. And then from there, you're looking at what needs to happen, right? So that's your beginning, middle, end, your dude with the dilemma and the solving of it. And then from there, you're coming up with the scenes. How can I tell this part of the pain and then from that, then after that, it goes to your copying and pasting it and filling out the rest of it. Great.
Right. A summary would be that the outline is about the structure of the story.
Okay.
The script is about character and dialogue.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And a lot of times we go straight to dialogue, straight to character, because that's the part of the iceberg we see. But without that structure, without that outline, without that's the key.
I agree with you. I've read so many things, and you can tell the people who take the time to lay the foundation and people who just hit that top part. And it's like, who, what? It's like when you watch a movie and somebody dies and you're like, I just don't care, and I should care. I should be crying here. Why am I not crying? Yeah, I'll follow you. Okay, so let's talk about movies. Let's talk about writing a movie. How would you go about that process as opposed to doing the TV?
It's the same process, but that part when you start saying, how do I break that story? Has instead of a half-hour show would probably have 3-4 movements, 3-4 things that happen, key things. A movie could have a dozen or more, and so it's just longer. It's like walking a mile versus walking 5 miles, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to take longer. So it's still this idea of, okay, I got this idea for somebody. Okay, and it might start with a character, a really great character, right? Or it might just be a situation. I have a feature script that I, whenever I have time, try to shop it, right? But it is the comedy. It basically it's on the conceit of some hillbillies, right?
Yeah.
I like
Me.
Billy hillbillies, right? So they suddenly their tornado tornado comes and picks up their trailer and drops it in the middle of a city, right? So they're then just doing fish out of water. And all this kind of things, and a whole bunch of other stuff happened. So you got an idea, just an idea. And so then you go, well, again, I just do it sequentially, vertically. Maybe people do it horizontal. This is how I do it.
Okay.
It's like this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. So I start just, now, we probably need a villain. Where's the villain going to enter in? We don't want to introduce the villain halfway through. The villain has to come up here. And then you just kind of just shape it. It's actually the hardest part. It is the hardest part to actually, because I teach classes of writing comedy, writing for kids and stuff, writing for animation. And it's the hardest part to teach because so much of it is just kind of how your brain is working. But you've got to get one thing has to follow another. And it's just putting those down because we got fish out of water. Let's just get that example. We got fish out of water. So now we need to see how ordinary life of these two guys who've never been off the mountain, walking around a city, what's going to happen to them? There's going to be a person who's trying to sell them, stuff out of their trunk, right? There's going to be people who are trying to do things. And of course, the conceit is that these are just innocence abroad kind of thing. They're just walking through life.
No idea.
No idea.
Yeah.
When I watched Elf, because I wrote this a long time ago, when I watched Elf for the first time, I thought, that's the show. Now it looks nothing like the show, but that's the conceit. Is Buddy the Elf is just walking through life, but he sees it through his very innocent eyes, right? He sees it through this very, no malice in him at all. And so, what would be the beats of the structure, and then what would be the ways to then flesh it out, and then what would be in this case funny about it, right? Because s- s- situations are funny,
Yeah.
and characters are funny,
Yeah.
and dialogue is funny.
Yes.
But at this point, we're really looking at what are the situations that make something funny,
Mm.
and funny is essentially at its heart an exaggeration
Yeah.
and the unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you think it's going to go this way, but it goes that way,
That's right.
and you just keep doing that over and over again. And the so it just takes longer because the middle act two is a bear. Act one is always easy because hey, I got an idea, I got a great way to set this up,
Yeah.
or you know how you want it to end. You know
Yeah.
how when you pull back at the end, this is how you want everything to be. But that darn middle portion where you're going to have people trying to achieve whatever their goal.
Yeah.
There's another way to think of it. One is to act one asks a dramatic question that has to be answered by the end.
Mm-hmm.
Will Indiana Jones find the lost ark?
Yeah.
Well, he does,
Yeah.
right? So another way to think about it when you're thinking through your story is what is it that on the front end gets resolved at the end?
Mm-hmm.
And the middle is them seeking the answer, trying to solve that. Will it's just a nice little exercise to ask yourself how would I put my story in the form of a question? Will the protagonist do
I
X, Y, Z?
I
Right?
see.
And so a lot of it is trying to uh, what's then going to be in their way.
Mm-hmm.
Jeopardy, and Jeopardy, of course, can be physical, right? For an
Mhm.
action movie or something, it can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be all sorts of things. It doesn't matter, but it has to also have personal stakes. It's kind of
Yeah.
like what you said about somebody's dying and I don't care, right?
Yeah.
So we have to care about the stakes, or else we go,
Mm.
I don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so we really want Indiana Jones to find the lost ark.
Yeah.
We really want him to, he and Marion to escape,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And then you got that great twist at the end when everything is now going to sit in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Right?
In the warehouse.
So
Typical.
so there's a progression, and I would advise people take your favorite movie.
Mm-hmm.
I choose Raiders because that's one of my favorites. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So just take your favorite movie and just keep watching it. Spend an afternoon watching the movie,
Mm-hmm.
then watch it again.
Mm.
Now, so because you're not looking to be entertained,
Yeah.
you're looking to analyze.
Mm-hmm.
Take your phone, open up stopwatch.
Yep.
How long does each scene look?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, last. How does that work? Just I call it the word deconstructing.
Yep.
What is it that how is it reverse engineering might be
Mm-hmm.
another way. What is it that is making this work? And then the other part of it would be um, why do I like it?
Mm. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
What is it that's pushing my own buttons? I- and sometimes if again you kind of think about it, and I always find when I'm trying to think about things that actually write it out.
Mm.
Our brains work really fast.
Yes, I do.
Mine used to work a lot faster, but our brains work really fast, and so we tend to gloss over things.
Mhm.
So when we have to write them out, not for anybody else to read, just for us to read.
Yeah.
If you have to write it out, it becomes it makes you slow down and actually
Mhm.
put them out there. And why do you like it? How does that work? Picture what that would sound like on a page, would look like on a
Mm.
page,
Mhm.
that dialogue,
Yeah.
because we can get lulled into thinking that, not thinking about what that would look like on the page. So
Mhm.
I also encourage people, go find movies that you didn't see, never saw, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
And then find the script for that. And there's a
Mhm.
number of places. Just Google free PDF download of scripts, right?
Yeah.
You can find it. And then read that script. Read it, think about it, analyze it. Ask yourself, if you were a studio executive, would you say yes to the script? If you were handed it as a writer to fix, what would
Yeah.
you fix? A lot of times Hollywood fixes things that aren't broken, but
Yep.
what would you do? Then go watch the movie.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we read and we see differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a writer, you're going to be reading before anyone's ever going to see it.
Yeah.
So connecting those ideas of what actually shows up on screen and what actually is on the page,
Mm-hmm.
we gotta mesh them together
Yeah.
as writers. And so and that can just happen. You can do that with TV, you can do it with anything. Just sit down and take a favorite episode, and how long do scenes last? How
Mm-hmm.
long does this whole movie last?
Yeah.
How long do these things happen? And because sooner or later, as a writer, you're going to look at that blank screen, right?
Mm-hmm. The blank page.
and the cursor is going to be sitting there just going any day now. And that's why I always like the outline.
Mm-hmm.
You trick yourself into suddenly knowing what you're going to write when you open up the computer, is because you know where you're going with it. So just doing your homework, really.
Yeah.
And it's for the most part free. You can just teach yourself a lot. I've often thought about this, and I don't quite know how to do it, but you actually learn a lot as a writer by reading bad scripts.
Yeah.
You actually learn more. I learned more when I was in my executive days, when I would be reading the scripts, and oh gosh, first draft is always, first drafts are first drafts, and learning what doesn't work. I was what they call a reader for a feature film company for a brief fleeting moment, and your job is to read it, synopsize it, say, yeah, it's worth doing. Yeah, no, it's not. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't work. And it really makes you, it's called coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would also encourage people who want to be writers or directors or whatever, but writers really especially, is to do coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Find a script of a movie you haven't seen. What's the synopsis of that?
Mm-hmm.
How would you phrase it? Because really, you think you know it until you dig in, until you really think, oh, well, this whole thing wouldn't have worked if, it's kind of like the flaw of the famous flaw of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, is that actually Indiana did nothing to find the Ark. The Germans had already found it.
Yeah.
Or he found it and they took it away from him.
Yeah.
And that's how it worked. But we don't care.
Yeah. He still gets credit for it, even though they found the city.
Which I like, because they actually do the Deus Ex Machina, the old word for the Greek tragedies, when they'd be having these Greek tragedies, and then all of a sudden Zeus comes down on a pulley, to just wipe it all out, make everything okay.
Yeah.
And I love that about Raiders, was that they opened up the Ark and we got rid of the Nazis that way. It wasn't the heroics of Jones, but but I digress.
Yeah, I always like that too. But that's what they definitely painted themselves into a corner. Now I wrote down some questions while we were talking. Some things really popped out at me. So I want to talk about first, before I get off on Comedy Land, I want to talk about, how do you make yourself right? How do you make yourself focus? How, when you're saying, okay, I've got a deadline, what's that look like?
It actually is hard. The old adage, I love having written, but I hate writing. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's just, I have to, a lot of times I'll put on instrumental music.
Cool.
Spotify has this great playlist that they made out called Mellow Cello. Oh, cool. And it's just really enjoyable into my brain. And because I can't have music that has lyrics
Yes.
because then I'm paying attention. So a lot of times I use music to kind of just get myself into that zone.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to it's almost like at night when you're trying to sleep and you keep thinking, oh, I've got to pay the plumber tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of times I just have a pad next to me because I always have one next to me. So then as you're starting to get in that groove, like, oh, I gotta call the vet.
Mm-hmm.
Just write down call vet, and then don't think about it,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think a lot of times you're trying to focus, right? And you don't want something going, and it's just a matter of here we are. This is what I'm gonna do. What's hard is the seasons when I'm doing like what I'm doing now, where I both write and produce this series that I'm doing. It's kind of like write in the morning, produce in the afternoon is what the way my brain works. But it's getting free to be able to say, this is what I'm doing right now, and I'm going to be in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
however you do that, I know some people who put on certain music, light a candle,
Mm-hmm.
get the ambiance just right. But I've also written at Starbucks, we, I say we homeschooled, my wife homeschooled,
Yeah.
but
So
then
does
we
mine.
did, yeah. And then we, for high school, they were part of a program that was down about an hour and a half or about an hour away from here called Biola University. They have a program for homeschool high school students.
Cool.
And so, I'd go and then I'd just park at a Starbucks. Well, I learned to write in Starbucks before I even had these fancy things.
Yeah.
You just have to, you do whatever. And the deadline is helpful. It's the pressure.
Yep.
Whether I feel like it or not, I got to do it. And in many ways, it's hard when you're first starting out because you earn a living all day. You maybe have a family, certainly have friends you're going to see. How do you squeeze all that in? So that when you sit down to write, having the energy to write, having the focus to write, it's really a mind game.
Yeah. Yeah. So, any tricks that you would recommend for somebody they've got the deadline coming up and they need to write something besides the music? What else?
At some point, you just have to do it. I think that by having the to know this is what I'm doing, and it's okay if I'm not doing something else.
Yes.
I'm someone that has a lot of different projects, a lot of different things, and it's easy to have that sense of whatever I'm doing right now, I have to be doing something else. So if you can just get yourself to the point where, okay, all I got to do is 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Just 20 minutes, I got to sit in this chair and start doing it. And I think also there's a mystery writer from the 40s called Raymond Chandler. And I love his Philip Marlowe books that have been made into movies and stuff like that, but the books are still better. I always love his quote was when you sit down to write, you throw up into the typewriter every morning and clean up every afternoon.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
And so a lot of times you can kind of get yourself going by what you write does not have to always be the final thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. So you just start writing. Just kind of do it. And a lot of times the character will say blah, blah. I mean, I will type blah, blah because I don't know exactly. I just got to get the next line. And so knowing that you're going to shape it is pottery. You're going to keep shaping it. It doesn't have to be perfect because you can get stuck on a line. Did he say it this way or there? What should I say? No, this isn't the time for that.
Yeah.
It's about shaping it. It's about a funnel.
Yeah.
One way to think about it. Write it up here. There's a lot that's wrong with this. And you're going to later shape it down. But just I sometimes just tell myself, I just got to get through this scene.
Yeah.
If I get through the scene,
the
momentum kicks in and you keep going. And then you I also then uh, Hemingway actually said, when you're writing, when you're getting close to the end of the day and it's time to stop writing, uh, don't finish the sentence you're on.
Oh, huh.
So then when you come back the next day, inevitably you read over what you're reading. I always do. You
Hmm.
read over it. And then you're ready to go
Yeah.
because you didn't finish it. Um, some people who have a hard time with completion,
Yeah.
might not be able to do that.
But that's kind of the point, isn't it?
Right. Well, that's the point. So those are some things to do, and the big one is that your first draft is called a first draft. In fact, I
Yeah.
even label it, because I'm labeling files, a
Hmm.
rough draft.
Yeah.
It's a rough draft. Then I have an internal draft.
Hmm.
And then when I finally send it to the producer, director, client, whoever it is that is going to give me notes on it or something like that, then that's called a first draft,
Yeah.
because then that's the official first draft of record.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I kind of came up with ways of what to name them, so I really know this is a rough draft, and
Yeah.
it's okay if it's rough.
Yeah.
Rough is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too. Writing is rewriting and giving yourself permission to be creative. I love that. Because it's, the left brain and the right brain, your creative side and your analytical side can't work together.
Yeah.
So you're talking about comedy, and I love comedy. And you had mentioned, how situations are funny and characters are funny. So when you are writing comedy, do you go through and just focus on the comedy aspects of the situation first, and then the characters comedy? How do you go about that to kind of layer on the humor?
Well, kind of what I've been saying. It's the structure.
Hmm.
What has to happen in the scene to kind of advance the story?
Yeah.
And the comedy isn't usually a plot point. I mean, it
Hmm.
can be,
Yeah.
but or another way of saying it would be the plot point could be comedic, a
Yeah.
crazy switch suitcases kind of thing
Hmm.
where somebody picks up the wrong suitcase at the airport, and the bad guys are chasing him, and he has $1 million in a suitcase, and he thinks it's just his clothes, and
Yeah.
somebody else, so it can be humorous or comedic, but so once you know what is going on with the story, the guts of the story, the non-funny part of the story, then a lot of comedy just comes from the way you look at things, and
Hmm.
it's always the unexpected.
Mm.
The best example of this I've seen is someone can look this up. The old Dick Van Dyke Show from
Oh yeah.
the late '60s, or actually early '60s, I guess. That was there's an episode called Father of the Day or Father of the Week, I think it is, and Rob has to explain to this class of kids what makes something funny,
Hmm.
and it's really a master class in how to write comedy, even though it is funny in and of itself. But the key is the unexpected.
Yeah.
The key is that I don't. I kind of who was it that said? I think it was E.B. White who said dissecting comedy is like dissecting a frog.
Mm.
You might learn something, but the frog,
Yeah.
isn't very good at the end. So sometimes trying to dissect comedy and explain comedy is kind of hard. It kind of defeats the purpose. But it's opposites who bang against each other. Neil Simon, was my biggest inspiration, and a lot of people don't even know who he is anymore. But um, he wrote a lot of plays. And that was his big thing. And he said that all of his plays were two Jews in a New York apartment arguing. Right?
Yeah.
That was what he wrote,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of what most of them are. Um, Certainly his early ones. And so, who's going to bump heads?
Hmm.
I keep mentioning the Star Spangled Adventures that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
That we did this one where we had George Washington, okay, and we need to get out um, the commitment that the people, his troops, made to cross the Delaware River to try to attack the British, right?
Mhm.
Or actually, it was the Hessians, but potato.
Yeah.
So, how do you get out that, right?
Mhm.
Because we're always trying to keep this show kind of funny, even though we're
Yeah.
trying to be also historically accurate. So, you know, you create a character,
Mhm.
fictional character, who comes into Washington's tent to, when he reaches for something, he knocks over three things. When
Yeah.
he does it, and he's a little simpleton. Um, so he's always basically, he's trying to talk Washington out of, hey, it's almost Christmas. Let's go home for a little while. We'll come back and fight him later. But of
Mhm.
course, he's doing it then in a humorous way,
Yeah.
rather than him. If it was a drama, he'd come in, but it's a comedy. So he goes,
Mhm.
so he has some lousy excuse as to why he's walked into Washington's tent, right? And so then he's like, so I was kind of thinking that, well, it's Christmas and all. Maybe why don't we just go home, and then that of course sets up Washington to then hear his heart and his
Yeah.
commitment as to why
Yeah.
we have to fight for liberty, for freedom,
Mhm.
you know. But you do it with the director and I, when we're talking through these things, we sometimes label that character the Gilligan,
Mhm.
because from the
Yeah.
old Gilligan Island show, the guy who messes everything up and is just a little slow on the uptake.
Yeah.
And so we have sometimes used that kind of a character
Mhm.
to bring out the comedy, because it's kind of like some people have said one of the funniest things about William Shakespeare is that during his tragedies, um, I think it's King Lear and I can't remember. Uh, basically in the middle, he brings out Falstaff, who is basically just a drunk guy who's
Yeah.
talking to the audience, and
Mhm.
everybody is laughing because on either ends of that, they've been dealing with a tragedy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so a lot of what comedy is really just trying to find the humor in the middle of it.
Mhm.
And it could be like the old Cary Grant movies, Bringing Up Baby, His Girl Friday, where
Mhm.
there's more words said in that movie than sometimes two movies, right?
Mhm.
Uh, they say more words in the first scene than they do with the old Sylvester Stallone movies, right?
Yeah.
The entire movie, But you know, but that's what makes Gilmore Girls work. They use that
Mhm.
same kind of rapid fire dialogue, and where they're saying funny things, but part of it is they never laugh at themselves.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
never they say ironic things, they say humorous things, but it's just this. So humor can come from a lot of different places. I lean, of course, towards slapstick and silliness, and
Mhm.
if you can add a dumb character in, you should always add a dumb character. Woody Harrelson's character in Cheers, the old Cheers,
Mhm.
I just love that. The dumb character, you know. Um, my favorite joke is that um, Sam, if anybody knows Cheers, this one character, Sam, says, I got to go to the little boy's room. And so he, heads to the bathroom. And Diane, who's a snobby kind of character, says, why do grown men feel the need to euphemize? And and Woody says, well, Miss Chambers, he drank a lot of coffee. See, you have to. I love that. That's a genius line. I love that.
Yeah.
So it's you get a lot of times adding just that one character,
Mhm.
you know, or you do the opposite. There's a reason why the Marx Brothers Night at the Opera is a night at the opera, because
Mhm.
a Marx Brothers movie about a night at the circus wouldn't be funny,
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
because
Yeah.
everybody is broad and clowns and
Mhm.
elephants and right. But
Yeah.
but at the opera, you add chaos into the middle of this structured, rigid thing.
Yeah.
Well, now you got something funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's playing against type. It's finding the unexpected.
Mhm.
It's characters that are kind of living in their own world. I worked on as an executive, I worked on the Winnie the Pooh show,
Hmm.
the late 80s version. And what we always said about Winnie the Pooh, because it's easy to think Winnie the Pooh is stupid,
Hmm.
right? And what we always said was, he's not stupid, he's not dumb,
Hmm.
he's just elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is that sense of a character who's elsewhere.
Hmm.
Joey Tribbiani on Friends, right? You know,
Yep.
that kind of character who just doesn't does a little slow to get it.
Yeah. 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 I get that. Someone who's off in La La Land. So
Yeah.
how did you get working with the Ben Carson stuff? How did that come about?
Oh, well, Ben Carson, about 2 years ago, formed a nonprofit, an educational nonprofit called American Cornerstone Institute.
Mhm.
And the goal is to teach kids things about American history, things about civics, government. Some of this is being lost in the schools, really.
Oh,
And
deleted.
so my friend and producing partner, Bob Arvin, who is had met them and had some interchange with them. I actually forget exactly what it was. He had been introduced by somebody else, and they said, "Oh, well, we're starting this new initiative." And so for about 6 months, they talked about it, and then Bob brought me in.
Mhm.
Bob and I have done a lot together. We each produce the show, and then he directs and I write, and we make a good team.
Mhm.
And so that's how I got introduced to it. And like I said, we're trying to. They offer a free curriculum. If you just go
Mhm.
to littlepatriotslearning.com, you can sign up, and it's kind of designed a little bit for homeschool students, but it's kind of anybody. Because so you can, based upon the age and the grade of the child, be able to see lessons, curriculum, fun activities, but then there'll be an episode that
Mhm.
we do that's the 7-minute one called Star Spangled Adventures. And they're just free. They're on the
Mhm.
website. So if you just go to littlepatriotslearning.com, go to our programs, and just keep following Star Spangled Adventures to the right page. We have 9 episodes right now. Before we're done, we're going to have 25.
Cool.
And we're talking about a second season, another
Awesome.
batch of these later.
Mhm.
And so it's really good. And also, I'll put a plug in for this. When you're there, instead of our programs, you go over here to um, uh, uh, Little Patriots Library. You'll see a book that I wrote with Dr. Carson. It's it's the first of a series of books called The Barker Family,
Mhm.
and it's a family of dogs.
Cool.
And so they have life adventures. The first one we have there is called Freedom of Bark,
Oh, I like
and
that.
it's really about, we have the freedom of speech, but yet
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
need to be civil and kind when we
Mhm.
do it. So that the first one that's fresh up there,
Awesome.
and then we're doing 3 others
Cool.
over the course of this year. So it was really great. They're an amazing group of people,
Yeah.
and they have only been around just a couple of years,
Mm.
because basically when Dr. Carson left the government
Yeah. B3.
administration,
Yeah.
when he was Secretary of HUD,
Yeah.
and a lot of the same people are the backbone of this, and
Mhm.
they're looking just to try to educate kids
Yeah.
and help them stay focused to what really the principles that make our government work and
Yeah.
make our country work, make our society work and
Yeah.
everything. So yeah,
Yeah.
I was just brought in like you do, back to your young people who are trying to break in. It's all relationships,
Mhm.
right? And so my friend, many times I brought Bob work. Bob has also brought me work.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing about how, when I got a job a long time ago, and the lady told me, she said, "Well, your real job is to make friends and make connections, because if you don't have connections, you will not stay working." And that's true with
Yeah.
every industry, especially nowadays. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the way it
Yeah.
is.
Well, it's relationships, kind of your reputation, and
Yes.
whatever you learn on the job. Those
Yeah.
are the only three things you're going to take from the job, and hopefully you made money also and
Yeah.
paid your bills while it's going on. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's relationships. I realized one time many years ago when I don't know, the phone wasn't ringing, wasn't couldn't get clients, and I basically realized every so I was going on the job boards, right?
Yeah.
You know, and nothing was happening, and I realized every job I've ever had has come from somebody I knew,
Yeah.
except for maybe one that
Yep.
was I just found online and I did
Yep.
a little gig. But it's really relationships is the key.
That's the truth. That's the truth. And it's vital. And I think that one thing I've learned, and I'm sure you agree, is it's important to be nice to people because you never know who's going to be your boss later.
Well, well, the old way of saying it's nice to be nice going up because you hope they'll be nice when you come down,
Yeah.
and because no matter who you are, you will come down.
Yeah. That's
And
the truth.
there's a woman who's a friend of mine who's a senior VP at one of the major kid networks, and she was my assistant over at another studio, and she was just really brilliant. And I said, one day I'm going to be pitching you,
Yeah.
and she said, "Oh no, come on, no, you know." And so probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I actually walked in and pitched her
Wow.
and said, I told you, because now she's the gatekeeper, right? And I'm
Yeah.
trying to pitch a show.
Yeah.
So that is really truly how it is.
Yeah. And then all right. Well, I got to wrap this up. Thank you for spending this
You
time
don't
with
want
me.
to talk another 3 hours because
I would love to, but
I'm from the south. I'm from the south. I
yeah,
can I can talk all day.
but the stuff that you shared here was absolute gold. I mean, absolute gold. Uh, phenomenal. Thank you for this. And I would love to do this again sometime. And I'd like to pick your
Yeah,
brain on other stuff, but for the association and everything. And but I really wanted to say thank you so
yeah.
much.
Oh, sure thing. This was a pleasure. It's always
Thank
fun,
you.
and I really will be praying for you and your this ministry because we as Christians working in the media, um, we have to do it together.
Yes, we do.
We have to do it in community. Doesn't
Thank
mean
you.
we have to agree on everything, but we
Thank
have to work together.
Yeah. You know, something that's just wild, right? Because when I started out, I didn't know like what I was doing as far as what God wanted for this. And I just started. And I ran into some people, and one of the guys was a Jew. He's like, we got the majority. It's like, we got the Old Testament. We agree on that. Let's work together. And I thought, why not set aside the things that make us different and agree on the things that bring us together? Because, we are Christians here to make a difference, here to stand for truth, freedom,
Hmm.
things that really matter in life. And I think in the
Yeah,
past, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. I think it's Ronald Reagan who said something to the effect of, "If I can agree 80% with someone
Yeah.
politically, then we're teammates, we're
Yeah.
partners."
Yeah.
Because there's always going to, even among Christians,
Yes.
like there's going to be secondary issues that,
Yeah.
hey, no, I see it this way, you see it that way.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I raise my hands, I sit here,
Yeah.
well,
It's all,
whatever, right?
yeah.
But we have to find out that we wrestle not against flesh and blood,
Come on. That's right.
and we are the only ones. We are the only ones on this earth right now
Yeah.
who is working. We pray, we ask
Yep.
God to work. We are certainly trusting whatever the angels are doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But God has put us here to be working, to be fighting,
Come
not
on.
against the people who are
Yeah.
running studios. We
Yeah.
don't fight against them. We don't
Yeah.
fight against them. We fight against the devil. We
Mm-hmm.
fight against the evil that is.
Come on.
We always keep talking about systemic problems in
Yeah.
the world. There is a systemic evil that
Yes,
has
there is.
been going on in this
Come
world
on.
for a number of thousand years since the
Yeah.
Garden of Eden.
Yep.
It's systemic. It's built.
Mm-hmm.
It's baked into everything we do,
Come
and
on.
only we are the ones, because God has revealed Himself to us through the Word, empowers us through the Holy Spirit to be able to combat by shining light,
Yeah.
because darkness is only the absence of light.
That's right.
You can't generate darkness. You can only turn off the light to generate darkness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just what we have to do.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I agree. All right. Well, I'm going to jump off here. Thank you so much for this.
All
I
right.
really appreciate it.
Well, this was a lot of fun.